Welcome to the Peaceful Parenting Podcast. I'm your host, Sarah Rosensweet, mom of 3 young people, peaceful parenting coach, and your cheerleader and guide on all things parenting. Each week, we'll cover the tools, strategies, and support you need to end the yelling and power struggles and encourage your kids to listen and cooperate so that you can enjoy your family time. I'm happy to say we have a great relationship with our 3 kids. The teen years have been easy and joyful, not because we're special unicorns, but because my kids were raised with peaceful parenting. I've also helped so many parents just like you stop struggling and enjoy their kids again. I'm excited to be here with you today and bring you the insight and information you need to make your parenting journey a little more peaceful. Let's dive into this week's conversation. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Peaceful Parenting Podcast. Today we have a coaching episode with Stephanie. Stephanie's the mom of 2 kids, Felix, who's a little baby, 18 months, and Thomas, who's 9. And Thomas is, as she describes him, she says, Thomas is an amazing, curious, strong-willed, more extra 2E kid. And she says he's definitely teaching me loads and triggering me loads. So she says she's working hard on self-regulation, self-compassion. That's what she wrote to me when she asked to be on the podcast. And it's perfect to be talking to her right now because we have our summit is coming up, our online summit, our free summit that we've put together just exactly for parents like Stephanie and maybe like you, for parents who have kids who are more complex. The summit is called Flourish with Your Complex Child, and it's all put together for peaceful parenting, even when you feel like it's not working, peaceful parenting your kiddo who may be strong-willed or sensitive or, spirited or some form of neurodivergence or a combination of all of the above. And I've just heard over the past months and years from so many of you that you feel like you must be doing something wrong. And that's something that Stephanie and I talked about. We talked about how even if you're doing all the quote right things, it can still be hard when you have one of these more or extra kiddos, those kiddos in the 20% that you hear me talking about. So it's perfect timing for you to both hear from Stephanie and for you to sign up for free for our amazing Flourish with Your Complex Child Summit. That's at sararosensweet.com/summit. Feel free to share this with a friend, share the podcast with a friend. That's how we can reach and help more people, and share the summit with a friend. Get a group together. You can talk about everything that you learned. It's really like, if I do say so myself, it is an amazing lineup and amazing interviews. I've been working on this for months. I've been interviewing people all over the world, the top experts in the field of supporting you and supporting your complex child. So let's meet Stephanie. If you're listening to this later than mid-October, you can still check out the summit, sararosensweet.com/summit. But if you're listening to this before it starts, it's running from October 16th through 20th. It's totally free to sign up and watch all the interviews. You can watch them all for free. And you'll also have an opportunity to upgrade so that you can give yourself more time and to really soak in the recordings. You can upgrade to the VIP, the very important parent all access pass. That's just an option. So you'll want to check that out for also the amazing bonuses that we're going to have from myself and from the other guests. So let's listen to Stephanie. I love talking to her, and she had so many great ahas. She's been working really, really hard on this and on parenting. She actually is doing my Transform Your Family Life course at the moment. So she's really on an amazing journey, and I found it a very inspiring conversation. So let's meet Stephanie.
Hello.
Good morning.
How are you?
I'm good. Yourself?
Good.
So I'm Stephanie. I'm the mother of 2 boys. My oldest is 9. His name is Thomas, and he's a firecracker. And he's the one that gives me a bit of a run for my money lately. And my youngest is almost 1.5. His name is Felix. And sometimes I almost think that he's my chance at redemption.
Oh.
That I will do better the second time around. So one of the things actually let's start with Felix. You know how babies, we decide for them, we kind of force them. It's like, it's time to change your diaper. You may not like it, but we will still go through the motion, and I might distract you. So do you know, what age do we, or how do you transition in you're not forcing them to do things, or you're letting them have, their big emotions. I know you're upset, and I don't try to distract you while we're doing. Do
Right.
you know what I'm
Yeah.
saying?
Yeah. That is such a good question. I'm gonna have to think about it for a second. So he's 1.5.
Mm-hmm.
I think you can, there are times where you can like let him choose. Like obviously if it's a poopy diaper, you don't want to let him sit around in his poopy diaper because he could get a rash.
Mm-hmm.
But there are times where you could say, do you want to change your diaper now or after we eat lunch or something like that? Like if it is like, I think you could find some ways to get some autonomy in there.
And would
Um,
you still distract him when he's upset? Or because that's what we do with babies.
yeah,
I
yeah,
realized that I kept kind of doing that. I kept
right.
like avoiding big feelings.
Yeah. I had a really interesting conversation with a dad that I coach around this exact same thing, and he has a 2.5-year-old. And he said, sometimes I feel like he said, when my son's upset, sometimes I feel, and I can like say, hey, look at this race car, or like, let's go play race cars in the basement or whatever. Sometimes I feel like I'm tricking him. And I thought it was just so lovely that he had that, like, he's really new to peaceful parenting, but he had this like uncomfortable feeling around like, feeling like he was tricking his son out of his upset. And I said, I think sometimes we have to just like check within ourselves. Like, does this seem like, just something small that that just a little change could make the difference and he could feel okay again? Or does it feel like he's having big feelings and we just really need to sit with the feelings? Because I think sometimes it is okay to just do the distraction and
Mm-hmm.
say, like, hey, look over there. And then they're kind of okay again. So I think it's sort of like a gut check thing almost. Like does this feel like bigger, like we have to sit with the feelings and just let him process the feelings? Or does this and also honestly, like, do you have the bandwidth to sit with the feelings? And if you don't, if you're feeling short-tempered or you're in a rush or something like that, maybe you distract and you make a note to yourself, okay, later on, we're going to have to deal with those feelings in the emotional backpack.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, that's interesting. I like that you brought up if I have the bandwidth to
Yeah.
deal with it. Because I like, obviously this is a journey, and I'm really like realizing a lot of things about myself. And so yeah, I think I feel other people's feelings a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, for a while I thought it was just normal, like all moms feel that, and I think to an extent it is, but it's like I feel upset, like I'm deeply uncomfortable when
Mm-hmm.
my children are very upset. And so like I have this huge need to like fix it, make it
Yeah.
better, right? And it's
So,
for
so
them but also for me, I realize.
yeah, yeah. So that's amazing that you're realizing that. And I think in that case, you do some self-talk around it's okay to have these big feelings. It's not, I mean, I think sometimes big feelings affect us. There's sort of two reasons. One, because we're empathic ourselves and it almost feels like we're also in pain. But then there's also the level of we're uncomfortable with our children being upset because maybe it means we're not being a good parent or something like that, or unhappy children mean we're doing something wrong. So I think that we need to address that on two levels, right? Like one, if we're feeling their pain, these are big feelings. They're going to pass. We're going to be okay again when we get through the other side. Both of us are going to be okay. But then the other part of it is just that self-talk of, even though he's really upset and upset that, I'm saying no to this thing or whatever it is, I'm still worthy and lovable, right? I'm still a good parent, even if my child is unhappy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's definitely another piece of the work I have to be
Mm-hmm.
doing. Yeah, self-compassion and self-regulation are big. I realize
Yeah.
I've been focusing so much on what do I do for him? How do I help him? And like it's like I knew I had to do that, but it was always like, well, there's no time for this right now. Or
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
so
Well, it's almost like that's where we start, right?
mhm. That's not the part that kind of ignites the little fire in every day of like the conflicts and the confrontations. That's the
Right.
part that makes it hard to handle those situations, but it doesn't, that's not what triggers the problems, if I may
Mm-hmm.
say so.
Mm-hmm. Well, I just remembered something else I said to that dad, going back to your question about distracting versus sitting with the feelings. If you think of yourself as an adult and you're feeling kind of stuck or blue or something, and your friend was like, hey, let's just like, let's go out and have a coffee and you'll probably feel better, versus like, hey, do you want to sit and talk about it?
Mm,
Sometimes one of those is the appropriate thing, and sometimes the other one is the appropriate thing, depending on the level of your upset. Do you know what I mean?
yeah.
Like, I think that's like a good way to think about it. Like, is this the kind of, is my child upset in the level of like, hey, let's just go and do something and get out of this funk, or is this something that we really need to sit with the feelings?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Like I have a specific example that comes to mind. Like I'm wondering what would be your take on this. So, well, like I said, we're having lots of struggles with Thomas lately. He's a kid, he's got a twice exceptional diagnosis,
Okay.
and he's been really, really anxious lately and refusing to take his ADHD medication a lot too. And so, like everything, it feels like his resources are like his baseline is really low lately.
Why doesn't he want to take his medication?
It's hard. It's hard to get his input on things. He will just reply like things that are not really meaningful, like it's stupid, it's boring, I don't need it. Like there used to be issues with like the swallowing and the sensory. His sensory issues have really gotten exacerbated lately, but like I thought we had overcome that. We had found solutions together. We found medication that can be open and sprinkled and like in food and stuff. So I don't think that's the issue anymore. But yeah. So he's
Twice
he's
exceptional.
struggling a lot lately, and like any little thing kind of triggers him. So like
Has school started?
no, and
Okay.
he's like saying that he's not gonna go, and so that recent podcast was interesting on that. So like yeah, tiny little things like his brother like flinging his baseball hat at him and be like, not that, or like the dog like runs in front of him and he almost trips on the dog. He's like, stupid dog, I hate you, blah blah. So just to show how tiny little things like set him off.
Mm-hmm.
And so last night we had to let him know that our camping trip that we were going to leave on tomorrow is canceled because they forecast so much rain, and the family that we're going to go with, they don't want to go, and frankly neither do we.
Mm-hmm.
And I dreaded having that conversation, as I always do, because I always feel like, oh, I have to get ready for this huge emotional response that I'm going to get. And so this is another example of like I realized I like wanted to be ready. I wanted to have things to like not comfort him, but like not convince him that it's okay that we're not going, but like so we're not going, but we're gonna do this and that instead, and blah blah. And was that wrong to do like to kind
No, I
of
don't think so. I mean, I think if it were me, I would have done the exact same thing, and I would have said like, we can have a camp out in the living room, or, something like, try to think like, I think it's good parenting too, if you have to have something really fun canceled, to try to think of something else that fun that you can do instead.
okay.
I mean,
And
he's
like
going to
so
be
I said
disappointed about the canceled trip no matter what, right?
yeah, so it's normal that you're upset and disappointed,
Mhm.
like so am I,
Yeah.
but I think we can make the best of it and have a lot of fun in other ways. So
Yeah.
that would not be like not giving him the opportunity to feel his big feelings and
Well,
develop
I mean, I think
resilience.
what would be that not letting him feel his big feelings is if when he's upset, then you said, oh, come on, it's not a big deal. We're going to do this other thing instead. So you have to allow for the disappointment, even
Okay.
even though you're doing something fun also. Both of
Mm-hmm.
things can be true.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And so in the context that I'm describing you, where he's like really kind of always on the verge of like blah, one thing I struggle with a lot, I think, is I hate to say it, I feel so bad, but like shaming, like making little snarky comments that like he's not meeting my expectations.
Mm-hmm.
So, but it's just like this dynamic that we got going on of like he does a lot of things, and I try to let go a lot because I realize that he's doing the best he can, and right now it's not very good, but that's all he's got. And
Okay.
I don't want to be on, like nagging all the time. But I think it chips off at like my patience, and like so like he'll just throw food on the floor and be like, go get it, stupid dog. So like I'm annoyed that he's throwing food, and like I'm like it's wasting, and then I have to clean the floor, and also you're rude to the dog. And so like but I'm trying not to say stuff,
Okay,
and
so
like
hold on a second. In that particular instance, wouldn't the dog eat the food? So it's not, I mean, you wouldn't have to clean it up, right?
it depends what it is.
Okay.
So
I know
like this
my dog,
morning,
if my dog was eating food on the floor, you wouldn't have to clean anything up because she would get every last scrap and crumb and you can just,
yeah, no, I guess Tesla is a bit more of like a foodie, so she doesn't eat everything.
okay. And then the second thing is like, who cares if he's rude to the dog? The dog doesn't know. I mean, I agree that wasting food isn't great, but I was just wondering if it was as catastrophic as it feels to you, if you could maybe like talk yourself down a little bit about it.
Yeah, I guess that's maybe like my anxiety too, because like he also does it with his baby brother. I don't know how until what age I can call him the baby brother, but so I feel like, isn't it like creating a habit of like saying mean things to like, I don't know, like we always used to say like we don't have a lot of rules in the house, but like respect, like treating family members with respect is one of them. And in my mind, even if it's an animal and she doesn't understand, it's kind of a way of reinforcing that rule.
So I think you're getting a little bit stuck on the symptoms of like whatever, you know, I would be more concerned with what's going on, what's making him talk like that, right? So that's what I would speak to him like, "Hey, you're such a, you normally love the dog. Why are you shouting names at her? Like what's going on, kiddo?" Like with real like compassion and curiosity, right?
Mm-hmm.
Instead of focusing on the behavior, I would focus on like, hey, what's going on? It seems like you're, really quick to shout at the dog today.
Yeah.
Are you
I,
okay, buddy?
when I do that, because often I'm able now to do that, so like I will like not respond or react. I try most of the time to like those like behaviors that I'm noticing that are like inside, but I
Hmm.
try not to react. And then
Hmm.
I'll be like, wow, your fuses, like your fuses are really, I don't know, I'm struggling with my English, sorry.
Hmm.
But like you're quick to react, like something must be upsetting. Did something happen, at camp today?
Yeah.
And I, he shuts down. It's like he doesn't want to. I'm starting to notice too. I think there's times that it's just not the right time. So like when he comes home from daycare or camp or whatever, I think he just needs to wind down. So even if he does things that show me that maybe I need to go explore that, he's not emotionally able to get
What if
into
you
that
could,
discussion.
yeah, I mean, I think it sounds like he has a really full backpack. What
Yeah.
if you could get playful when he says, you stupid dog or whatever? I say, oh, as long as, the Larry Cohen trick of, as long as you don't call her the
Poopy diaper,
potato head.
smelly. Yeah.
Yeah. And see if you can get
Yeah.
him laughing at those times instead of going straight for like the emotion that he might be, the tension that he might be feeling underneath.
It's good. It's good. I should do that. The couple of times that I tried doing that, like he called something, oh, stupid fucking blah blah blah, and I was like, "You're right." And what about that stupid thing, da da da, and da, da, da,
Yeah.
and I think it. I don't know that he laughed. He's hard to make laugh, but at least it diffused
Yeah.
like the tension. So I should
Good.
definitely use that tool more. You're
Yeah.
right.
And, I think you have to remember, Stephanie, that he doesn't want to be a jerk, right? Nobody wants to be a jerk. Like there's something going, like he's not giving you or his dog or anyone a hard time. He's having a hard time.
I
Like, yes, on
know.
the surface, it looks like he's giving everyone a hard time, but nobody wants to be a jerk.
It's like I know that and I believe it, but in the heat of the moment, there are certain things that he does, when he like looks at you and he does it to spite you, or he's
Well,
like,
okay, so
no, I won't help you. And
I
I'm
know
like,
these are old, it's like old habits and they're hard to break, but he's not doing anything to spite you. He's just, he doesn't know how to get his needs met. He doesn't know
Yeah.
how to communicate them properly. He's stuck, right? He's a bit stuck.
So you would just ignore completely the behaviors of like being disrespectful to me or to his dad, and like his dad will talk to him, and they're like oil and water. It's really difficult, and but my husband is really trying hard to change his
Good, good.
mindset, and I would say his it's a slow process. So his body language and his tone is like kind of betraying him sometimes, that he doesn't
Mhm.
fully mean what he's saying, or but he's like really trying, and at least like he's not yelling and he's not, but Thomas is really perceptive, and he and not patient, because I guess he's been burned so many times
Mhm.
that like almost the second my husband starts talking, he's like, stop it, no, I don't care, shut up. And I'm like, it's hard
So,
to
so
ignore
what's
all
he
those
saying?
really awful behaviors.
What's your husband saying? Like, I think sometimes parents try to teach too much or talk too much when a kid is dysregulated,
Yeah.
and just being quiet might be the what actually Thomas needs.
So we should,
Listen, this is the thing. He's only 9. You are probably, if you're like most parents, you and your husband are probably like shooting off into the future. He's never going to be a good kid. He's never going to learn to get his emotions under control. We have to nip this in the bud. Like that's fear, right? And as long
Mhm.
as you're reacting from a place of fear, you're not going to be able to support him in the moment,
Oh, I'm writing this down.
right?
As long as we're reacting from a place of fear.
You can't support him in the moment. So one of the things we always say is like, what would you do if you weren't afraid that you had to teach him something, or afraid that you had to nip it in the bud, or
Mhm.
afraid that, he's being disrespectful and we can't let him get away with this? Like, if you didn't have those fears, how would you react to somebody who was just having a really hard time?
Mhm. Yeah, I guess it's easier to be a bit more like empathetic and let things slide. It just sometimes it's like one thing after another. So you let it slide, you let it slide, you let it slide, and then it's like,
Well, I mean, he sounds incredibly dysregulated and full backpack, and he's got a lot going on, it sounds like.
mhm, mhm, yeah. So along that same line of like full backpack, and we're trying to like not force him and to correct him too much, but like cooperation to get through routines and do things is like really hard. And like we don't want to go to like, well, threats and punishments and consequences and all that stuff, because like we're doing the course. But it's sometimes it's how do you get him to bed? And like I know if he is not sleeping soon, or I know if he doesn't wash his body at least once per week, he will have an infection, because he
Yeah.
doesn't so. And we try, sometimes it's like it's this whole production of like, so for getting washed today, do you want to like take a nice bathtub with this and that and blah blah blah, and we can put music, or do you want to do shower? And it's like we put in all the efforts, and every step is hard, and when he decides I'm not doing it, we're stuck.
Hmm.
So when
So
he's like I'm not doing it, what
So
do you
what
do?
kinds of stuff, like you said, going to bed?
Or like brushing his teeth, like all the boring, tedious stuff of like morning routine and evening routines
Right.
is hard. There are days where he'll surprise me and be like awesome, but most days like, and whenever transitions are hard, so
So
whenever,
maybe one thing you might want to do, just sorry to interrupt, but maybe
no, no.
start keeping track, keep a log of hard days and better days and see if you can notice any patterns. Because maybe there is a pattern of the days that he is easier and more agreeable to do the things. So maybe just take some notes, at the end of the day, like different things that have gone on, and what if you're noticing anything, and then you can look and see if there are any patterns over time. I think having like a conversation with him outside of are you familiar with the Ross Green Plan B,
Yeah.
the collaborative proactive solutions?
Yeah, I printed all the stuff. I'm almost done the book. And
Hey,
definitely, this is something that we're like, I think we're dipping our toes in it. So, like, the
well, even to
language,
have
like,
like a even to have like one of those the conversations, the information gathering conversations, like when it's not an issue, say with the brushing teeth thing. I've noticed that, it's really hard for you to brush your teeth, or you really don't like brushing your teeth at night. What's up with that? And just try to get some information from him, right? What's up with that? And then, you're allowed to say your concerns. Like my concern is if you don't brush your teeth, you're going to get rotten teeth. And have you ever showed him pictures of rotten teeth?
yeah, yeah, I think so. And he's had cavities and he doesn't like, you know,
Yeah.
having, the injection and getting that fixed.
Yeah. And say, so that's my concern about you not brushing your teeth. What do you think? What do you think we could do to solve this problem? And having just like a calm conversation with him outside of the time. Like, what
Hmm.
would make it better for you? What would make it easier for you? Do you want to brush your teeth so you don't have cavities and you have nice teeth when you're a grown up?
Yeah. I find often it's like if we're able to have a conversation like that, he says the things, but then when it happens and we try to implement what we had discussed or whatever, either he goes to like, I don't care, I'm not doing it mode, or like it works for a bit and then it flames out.
Yeah. I
But
mean, it's
yeah,
worth keeping
definitely.
trying. And then if he says, I don't care, I'm not doing it, say, I remember when we talked about it the other day, you seemed like you really thought this was a good idea or something like that. I mean, ultimately, you can't make him brush his teeth, and I wonder if you backed off some of it, that,
Yeah.
if he
And
would
I
be
like we
more
tried
willing
like
to
when
do it.
we went for like a week where we like almost didn't talk about it and was like, and sometimes I think my gut is telling me that maybe we need to do that for a while, actually, like completely back off everything. I mean, honestly, if we go like a full week of like no showering, no teeth brushing or whatever, he's not gonna die from that,
I love this so much. I mean, that's what I would
yeah, but
do.
it feels at the same time, that's what my gut is saying, but at the same time it feels like my husband actually would say like, oh, it's just taking the easy way not to have to manage
So,
his
so
behaviors.
there's a woman, Amanda Diekman. She has kids who are like way more extreme than your son, from what I can tell. And I don't know if she's developed it, but she's sort of popularizing this idea called low demand parenting.
Yeah, I would listen to her on a podcast, I
Yeah,
think. Yeah,
yeah.
for like
So,
PDA kids and stuff.
yeah, yeah. So you might want to think about, like, basically her line in the sand is like, is it worth it for is this demand worth it for the disconnection that it's going to cause?
Hmm.
I don't know if she would say that, but that's sort of what I've taken from
Yeah.
her thing. And for in terms of teeth brushing, have you ever heard of xylitol? Do you know what that is?
Isn't that a type of sugar?
Yeah, it's a type of
Okay.
sugar. It's a real
Yeah.
sugar. It's not
Yeah.
an artificial sweetener,
Okay.
but it's actually really good for your teeth. And so, maybe you get some xylitol gum or some xylitol spray and just say, and maybe he doesn't even know that this is because he's not brushing his teeth, because then you'll get, I'm not going to brush my teeth, I'll just chew a piece of that gum. But maybe just to make yourself feel better, if he's not brushing his teeth, give him some of this gum a couple times a day, and that might help you sort of feel a little bit better about the not teeth brushing.
Okay. Okay. That's interesting.
Yeah.
And do you think like doing it, but just for a while, you were mentioning it sounds like his emotional backpack is really full and all that. I feel like maybe, yeah, if we did that for a while, just so that he can kind of become less stressed, and then
Yeah.
maybe we would be able to kind of, he would be able to let out, right? Move from mad to sad, and
Yeah,
like
yeah.
maybe, and
I
then after
mean, it's
that,
worth
we could do
trying.
Ross Green
Yeah.
approach.
And also, like, do some, I mean, does he like roughhousing? You said he's hard to get laughing. Does he ever cry? Like, I'm just thinking about the backpack emptying stuff.
Really rarely cries. Like if he has bad feelings, he will either want to avoid it. So like if like he will avoid movies that make him feel sad or anything like that. And yeah, if he has a feeling of like disappointment or anything, right away it goes to anger. He
Yeah.
gets angry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, have you talked to him about how important it is to cry and how all the stress in our body comes out through our tears, which is true, like
Yeah.
scientifically?
I feel like he's not very welcoming that conversation right now. It's just, well, I hate it. I don't want to ever feel like that again.
Oh, then you say, I know, I understand. At the same time, it's really important for our bodies and to feel happy and feel good to like
Yeah.
let all those stresses out of our bodies. And maybe you
Uh-huh.
say stresses and tensions instead of sadness because maybe that feels a little less threatening to him.
Yeah. It's interesting.
How's your connection?
I feel less connected to him than before. It seems harder as he gets older.
Well, and
Um,
also honestly, like having your baby probably was a very giant part of this, right?
yeah, I think he didn't act out much and he wanted this, like he said so. Like we were doing like fertility stuff for a long time and he like ever since he was like 3 years old, he like asked Santa for a baby brother. So
Yeah. Good thing it
but
was a boy.
yeah, but he had really mixed feelings because then he was
Hmm.
so happy. But then, yeah, I think it was hard.
Yeah.
Honestly, looking back, I think things started to get really hard. Like I can see like moments, especially like, well, the pandemic. And then when we got the dog, it was a lot of adaptation and he struggled with that. And then the baby.
A lot of
Um,
kids, when you get a dog, a lot of kids feel like it's like getting a new baby. But no, a lot of parents aren't aware of that. But they feel as displaced almost as if you've got a human.
yeah, again, he was so happy, but then he would say things like, "Oh, you're always taking care of her." Well, I'm like, "Well, do you want her to pee everywhere in the house?"
Yeah,
But I probably could have done a better job at validating. I
right.
think I'm so self-conscious all the time of like wanting to do well that I go to this place of like I need to kind of give explanations of why I'm doing that to prove that it's not
Yeah,
because I don't care and it's not because instead of validating,
yeah,
I'm working on that.
yeah. So both things, that remember what I just said about even though, your son might be complaining about something you're doing, not giving him enough attention or paying too much attention to the dog, that sounds like it sets off your shame triggers. So you need to tell yourself, even though he's upset with me, I'm still worthy and lovable, right? I'm still a good parent. Both those things can be true at the same time.
Yeah,
Sounds like you try to explain away a lot of the things that he's upset about, trying to
yeah.
make him not upset.
Mm-hmm. Good point. Yeah, you were asking about our connection. So technology kind of drew a wedge between us two, like trying to manage that. And it's not that I don't want him to do any. It's just, his eyesight kind of dramatically got bad. And so the optometrist says, it should not be more than half an hour at a time and things like that. And I worry about him. So, but yeah, and there's certain things that are like cool now that watching certain YouTube videos of like gamers and stuff, and I'm like, I judge like the content, and so I think that I'm really trying to catch myself so that he doesn't feel that I like kind of dismiss what he likes or just want
Mhm.
to control. And because I feel like technology, definitely us trying to control, take him off of it and being done, and the comments we make about some of the stuff that he watches, and he's really sensitive, and I think that really hurt the connection. But despite that, I feel like he wants me all the time. He wants me at
Mhm.
bedtime. He wants to snuggle and
Good.
he will confide in me certain things. And so I don't feel like we have a bad connection. I just feel like it's not as effortless as it used to be.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Do
We're
you
going on a
get,
trip, just him and I, though.
oh,
So,
nice. Do you get special time with him?
well, I guess it doesn't fit all the requirements, like in the sense that sometimes it will include like a board game or like reading together, either side by side and discuss what we're reading, or like reading the same thing, or like playing Mario Kart or something.
Mhm.
He doesn't, honestly, he always kind of struggled with playing, just like imagination. He'll do it with his
Corey
friends.
and I have been talking about that in terms of special time and neurodivergent kids. and that sometimes neurodivergent kids do have a harder time with that like imaginary play, and that, you know, that's more like the free form, maybe not imaginary, but more unstructured play is what I meant to say. And that maybe with neurodivergent kids, special time might look a little different in terms of that it might be more structured. It might be more, it might look a little bit different, and that's okay, is my point. It's the one-on-one time and the connection that we want to make sure that we're getting. And maybe it doesn't look like your classically structured special time. However, do you feel that it's filling his cup? Do you feel like it's building connection, whatever you're doing?
Yeah, I think so. I think he would always need more, but it's definitely
There are lots of kids
important.
that always need more, right? And it's okay if we can't give them everything that they want. And we just try our best to do it. And if they do want more, we try to empathize with their big feelings, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. There's examples from, I think your handouts, or there's certain things that, but it's not necessarily like scheduled in. So like having a balloon and just like, okay, we can't let the
Yeah,
balloon touch the floor,
great.
or like, I guess that wouldn't be special time because it's the whole family,
But
but that will get him
it's still
laughing,
building.
running around the island. Oh,
Yeah,
the dog chases the baby, Thomas chases the dog, and
yeah. I
yeah.
love that. Are
Mm-hmm.
you able to, I was going to say that, the whole thing we were just talking about having a new baby. Are you able to have any conversations where he can kind of talk about his mixed feelings in terms of like, that it's how excited he was to have a brother, and also how maybe it's a little bit hard because you don't have as much time or attention for him as you used to, and sort of just like helping him to be able to offload some of that?
Yeah. I think we encountered two roadblocks when we try having those conversations. One is I go easy into like justification mode
Okay.
because I'm like insecure, I guess.
Well,
And
I
the
think,
other is if it raises bad feelings, he's like, okay, we're done talking. So I
right.
have to accept that it might need to be done in tiny
Small.
chunks.
I love
But
that. That's
that's not
okay.
my expectation. I'm like, oh, there's time now, and now I have the emotional bandwidth to have that
Right.
talk. So I wish we would do it now. But he's not able to do that.
Yeah, yeah. Just keep working on it though. And in terms of your justification, it's the same thing again, right? In terms of like, I'm even though my son is, having these hard feelings about his baby brother, I'm still worthy and lovable. I think you, like a lot of us, have this idea constructed of ourselves as worthy and lovable when nobody's unhappy with us.
Or the fact that he's struggling, I definitely, it's like, oh, it's because I did all these things wrong. And I know like there's a sentence you said, I don't know if it's in a podcast or about like when we're being hard on ourselves, or we can't make the changes, that we want to make, or what, obviously
100%.
it was way better said than what I just did, but I'm trying to repeat that to myself because it's like the more I dive into all this, the less self-regulated I am because the more I find out everything that I do
Okay.
wrong.
Okay, listen, Stephanie, you have to forgive yourself for not knowing what you know now, right? You did the best you could with the tools and knowledge that you had at the time, and that's enough. You're knowing more now, but if you use this to beat yourself up for everything that you didn't know, you're right. You're not going to make any progress. And the
What
way I
about
see it,
the fact that I know now and I'm still doing some of those things? Like, do you have like an idea of like what I could tell myself to kind of
well, if you
regroup?
knew and you were still doing those things, it tells me you didn't have the resources, right? Because nobody does like the wrong thing on purpose. I don't mean right and wrong, but I couldn't
No,
think
no,
of
I get
the word,
it.
right?
Mhm. Uh-huh.
So, you're working towards having more resources, working on your own feelings that are coming up around all of this, which is all wonderful. And also, honestly, I think that your son would have been one of those more complex kids, even if you had been parenting him peacefully all the way along.
Yeah.
Is the only way that you're going to make progress is by being kind and compassionate with yourself when you mess up. You will mess up. Everybody does. We all do. And when we do, we have to talk to ourselves like our inner best friends instead of the inner critics. Hard on yourself actually makes you more reactive in the moment and not be able to make progress. And of course, I'm not saying we don't keep trying to make progress. Of course, we're going to, because it's so important to us. But beating ourselves up never gets us where we want to go.
No, it's crazy how I realized so many things. I thought I was just hard on myself, but also like I'm hard on people. I have high expectations in life. And the other day he said something like, "Oh, I don't want to tell you what I did because you'll be disappointed in me again." And
Aw.
like I never said the words, "I'm disappointed in you."
Right.
But I was such a slap in the face, you know.
Mhm.
It's like he knows what I wish or whatever I would have liked him to do. So, and if he doesn't do that, he feels bad about himself. So I'm like, yeah, I really have to work on
Well, I mean,
my
clearly
thinking.
that was how you were raised.
Yeah.
And it's really hard to not fall into the same things how we were parented.
And
So
you raise
so
a
listen, what a gift though that you're becoming aware of all of this now and that you're making changes. A gift for your kids and for yourself that you're
yeah,
making changes.
yeah.
Focus on that. Focus on the fact that you are making changes, even if it's baby steps. You're not going to be like perfect overnight just because you're doing a course and working on these things, but you're making baby steps to a lot of growth and change.
Mm-hmm. And do you think I should just ignore? Because you said you brought up like when I was a kid, and so my parents, and so I find like I find myself a bit avoiding to spend more time with my parents because I think I get more into my like shame and like it looks bad and so I'm less patient with him. And I know
Yeah.
like just yesterday my mom was FaceTiming me with my brother and Thomas wouldn't come to say hello. And that I
Mhm.
know that's like really a trigger. My mom has made comments numerous times like, well, eventually you need to teach him that he needs to take care of, family
Yeah.
members. And that's not how you treat people that you love. If you want them to pay attention to you, you make an effort and you at least come and say hi. So I know that's how she feels. And obviously I wish he would do that too, but I want
Mhm.
to break that cycle of like
Yeah.
forcing him to come say hi, shaming him for not doing it. So sometimes I find myself kind of isolating from family, but it's hard. Also, he wants to see grandma, so it's hard
Mhm.
to explain. How do you find a balance
Yeah.
like that?
So I think you could, like, just using the example that you gave of the FaceTime, I think that you could empathize with your mom and also still hold the limit that you're not going to force your son to come and say hello. So you could say something like, "Oh, mom, I know that it's really sad for you," or whatever emotion you think it might be, or frustrating that he doesn't want to come and say hi. I'm so sorry that he doesn't want to come and say hi right now. And just like apologize for that and just tell her that you're sorry that she's disappointed. And don't say I'm sorry you feel that way. but just, I'm so sorry that Thomas didn't want to come and say hi. I know that's really disappointing for you. Maybe that's what I would say. And just leave it at that. And then when she brings up, if she starts lecturing you about respect and all of that stuff, just say, thanks, mom. We're working on all of this. I'll take that into consideration.
Mm-hmm.
I love the line, I'll take that into consideration. Thanks for your input. I'll take that into consideration because what's somebody going to say after that? And it also is no guarantee that you're going to do what they say,
Mm-hmm.
right? And if it feels hard for you, just remember who's your loyalty to at this point in
Yeah.
time, right? Your son, not your mom.
Mm-hmm.
So if possible, just try to think, she's doing the best she can. She did the best she could raising me. She has some old-fashioned ideas, and you can still love her even if you disagree, and you can just sort of stand up for Thomas while respecting her having different ideas.
Yeah. I like also telling her that we're working on that so that I think that meets my need of like, I don't know, I guess justifying myself again or like feeling like I'm being told I'm not good enough of a
Right.
mom
Yeah.
and like wanting to please my mom and also kind of maintaining my loyalty to Thomas and respecting his needs in that situation. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's really important to let people around you, like if you've got one of those complex, more extra kids, to let people know that if you feel like you're going to be judged, to let people know that you're working on it so that you can maybe remove a little bit of that like feeling of shame.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it may not look, me working on it may not look like what you would think or how you would work on it, but like trust me that I'm addressing
I
this.
love that. I love
Yeah.
that. One thing my mentor says, Dr. Laura says, that I've always thought, oh, gee, it would be really, I'd have to be really brave to say something like this, but I'm going to share it anyways, even though I think you'd have to be really brave to say it, which is you had your turn when you were raising me. Now it's my turn to raise my kids.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because that's what it is, really,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah. All
All
right. Well, I
right.
think it's time to wrap
Yep.
up.
Thank
Um,
you.
but yeah, I hope this was helpful and
Mhm.
we'll check in and see how everything went. You've got a lot of things you can work on.
Yes, definitely.
All
Thank
right,
you so
great.
much.
Hey, Stephanie, welcome back to the podcast.
Hi.
Okay, so how have things been? It's been about a month, I think, since we spoke last. And yeah, so I think the first thing we talked about was Felix and sort of your worry that you were forcing him to do things. And has that felt any different?
Yeah, well, I guess it's just kind of like an overthinking that's like a result of all these changes I'm trying to do in my parenting. So like our talk really helped in the sense that I kind of just trust my gut a bit more in the sense of like, oh, well, if it's something small like he just tripped or whatever, like we can just distract and be happy, or like if it's something bigger, but also I realize I think like he's still so young that I can like my default can be to try and just kind of like distract and do something else. But then if it doesn't work, then that means that it's just like he needs to let it out. And it's my cue to kind of practice conveying like calmly that he's safe even within those big feelings, and like tell myself that and kind of give off that vibe, which is where I went wrong with Thomas. So
Oh,
I
okay.
guess that's
So
a big.
so first of all, I hate to hear you beat yourself up about Thomas. So I know you're laughing, but you, as we said last time, you have to forgive yourself for not knowing what you didn't know. And
Mhm.
I love that you are having these like big ahas about this and about
Mhm.
that. Like, I just want to like highlight something you just said, which is you're letting yourself, trust your gut in that it's okay if he cries and, and letting, if he falls down, distracting him a little bit and then just listening to thinking like, is that enough? Does he need more? Or can we move on from here? Like, I love that. That's so great. Yeah,
Yeah.
wonderful.
Mhm. So overall, with him, it's just, yeah, I realized there's a lot of thing with fear with me, and so I think I was just starting to kind of overflow some of my fears and with all my journey with Thomas on him, and be like, okay, how do I prevent, like how do I not make any mistake, and also like
Oh,
that's like not possible. I
yeah,
realized.
yeah.
So, but just like the mindset shift of like, okay, this is actually like an easier opportunity to practice what I'm learning about like big feelings are safe, and like I can make him feel safe even if I can't make him feel better right now. And that's
Hmm.
okay. That's being a good mom. Like I remind myself of that.
That's so great. And also, I think I said this to you last time, but even if you had like, quote, perfectly peacefully parented Thomas, he probably still would be one of those kids who's that
Yeah.
more extra kids, right? Like it's
Mm-hmm.
not you're you're being a conventional parent to him didn't create the challenges that he has.
Mm-hmm.
It might have
Yeah.
made
And
the
like, well,
challenges harder in the moment,
yeah.
but it didn't create the challenges.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. And like going through the program right now, and like I realized there's a lot of things that I did good. Like there's a lot of the tips and the things for transitions and that I was doing. So yeah, I think I'm trying to focus on celebrating the things I did well and not just like catastrophize that those things I did wrong kind of like screwed it up, and now he's so unhappy because of me.
Yeah, no, that's so good, Stephanie. That's awesome. All right, well, how are things going with Thomas?
I would say, I mean, it's kind of hard to evaluate progress, also because like it was the end of the summer and then he went back to school. So I would say overall his baseline is still really low. There's good days and much harder days and like so days. But yeah, his baseline is low, and I would say we're both low on resources, but like I mean it's not worse than it was. I think there's not a lot of progress in how he is, but there's progress in how I think or how I look at things, maybe.
Well, that's
Yeah.
the only thing you can control.
Yeah. So like for example, I'm better at like maybe validating his feelings or like leading with empathy, but it's like if he reacts in a certain way, like he just like gets mad that I say like, oh, you must be really upset that to hit the dog or to push your brother, and he'll like ignore my empathy comment or like just go, yeah, whatever, she's stupid or I hate him and then
Well,
it's kind of like, oh, then I'm stuck because
but
I was
even
trying.
if he's ignoring it or reacting that way, it doesn't mean he's not feeling it,
Okay. Okay. See,
right? I
like
mean,
I take all
sometimes,
those things as like like I'm not doing it right
right.
because then ah,
But
I
this is the
stuck.
thing. There are so yeah, I don't, but maybe by the time the podcast comes out, the new name of my business might be announced, but we're in the process of rebranding my business. And the new name is called Reimagine Peaceful Parenting. And I think that, part of the reason why we chose the name was because I think there's this idea out there that if you're doing peaceful parenting right, it's going to look like this XYZ thing, right? Like, if you empathize right, your child will just melt into your arms and cry. Or if you empathize right, they won't be upset. Well, you know what? Sometimes you can be doing all the quote right things, and it doesn't look like the books say it should look,
Yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
that's why we're talking about reimagining it, because you're doing the things and you have a tough kid. What that means sometimes is the things that you are doing are not gonna, like, you're planting seeds, right? You're planting
Mm-hmm.
seeds, and it might take a long time for those seeds to grow up into the flowers or the trees or whatever they're going to grow into. But the point is that you're preparing the soil and planting the seeds now. And as he matures and as his brain matures, all of the things that you're doing are going to have, I'm going to keep going with this cheesy metaphor, the roots will be there, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I think also the thing is like I lean a lot on his like response or reaction to see if I'm doing it right. But also like there's so many layers. I think I'm realizing like even if I'm learning to think like to fix my not fix but like swap my thoughts or and like say something different than what my impulse would have been, like there's so much like work that needs to be done underneath like in me, like so I'm like responding better, but I think like I'm such an open book, so sometimes he'll see my true feelings, right? So even if I'm saying you must have been so upset to push your brother or like so eager to come eat breakfast for you to push your brother, but even if I'm saying the right thing, I think he can sense that I'm like irritated or exasperated that he's doing that thing again or
So that's your
um,
next step. That's the
mhm.
inner work that you need to be, and I know you are doing that, but that you're
That's the
right.
self-regulation, right? And all
Yes,
that.
you're
Yeah.
right, because it doesn't matter what we say in terms of words of empathy if we're not actually feeling like we understand our child and we can actually see their perspective,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And tell ourselves, that our mantra, he's not giving me a hard time, he's having a hard time. Or, the examples that you just gave, he's young, like, pushing someone on their way to the breakfast table or whatever. He's young, his impulse control skills are not there yet, and he's a spirited guy, right? So yes,
Yeah.
it is annoying that he like pushes somebody on his way to the breakfast table, but we also just want to keep reminding ourselves he doesn't want to be a jerk.
Yeah. And like, yeah, that's it. That's one that like I try to remind because like that he's not giving me a hard time, he's having a hard time. I'm like really good at believing that one. I guess it's like my other default is more in terms of like the fear and the catastrophizing. So the jerk helps more there in the sense that it's like I'm afraid he's like, oh, and it feels awful to say, but like a bad person. Like he doesn't
Mm-hmm.
care about others and he's like unkind, or you know, but there are other times when he's regulated that he does like such sweet things. So I really try to delight in those and focus there. But in the moment when he's so unkind and so rough with his brother and like it's like a real trigger for me. So even if I'm learning to say the right things, like he can tell. He can
Right.
totally tell.
So in those moments, your biggest thing is going to be he doesn't want to be a jerk, right? He's
Mm-hmm.
still learning. He's got, kids who are 2E have very asynchronous development, and
Mm-hmm.
he has ADHD, so his impulse control is so I used to say what I had heard was that kids with ADHD are 3 to 4 years behind
Yeah.
in a lot of ways in terms of their impulse control. I just heard a good rule from some other ADHD experts, which is that they're 1/3 behind.
Mm-hmm.
So it fits in his, from 9, he's more like 6. But as kids get older, if they're 15, they're more like, what would that be? 1/3 behind? Would that be 10?
Well, if we say 15, he would be 10. Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know how long that fraction lasts
Mm-hmm.
for, but in terms of reminding yourself in those moments when he is pushing someone out of the way, oh yeah, this is more like a 6-year-old who is, not hasn't got that impulse control yet. So hopefully that will help in terms of that getting to the true empathy, because I see what you mean. Like if he's actually really dysregulated and he's upset about something, it's much easier to believe he's not giving you a hard time, he's having a hard time. But if he just
Mm-hmm.
seems, quote, rude or mean, just remember it's just like a momentary like loss of impulse control.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I will try to
And
reframe it
and
that way.
I love too how you're focusing on the times when he is sweet and considerate, because it can be so easy in those moments of, quote, rudeness to lose sight of, yeah, actually he is a really sweet kid and he is a good
I'm wondering
person.
though, like, you know, I don't just delight in it. Often, like, I will comment on it, like, wow, I really like to see you do this, or it's so beautiful how you're interacting with your brother right now, or something like that. But sometimes I almost wonder if, like, the fact that I put like a lot of emphasis on what I wish he did when he doesn't do it, and he can tell that I'm like disappointed or irritated, that it's still kind of shaming him or like making him feel like a bad boy, you know what I mean?
Yeah, maybe.
So I should just kind of be delighted, but not like add anything, like not.
Well, you could say, like, if he's nice to his brother, or say he shares a toy with his brother or something, and then his brother's happy, you could, instead of saying what you think about it, you could say,
Mm,
like, oh, look at your brother so happy that you're sharing toys with him,
I like that. I like
right?
that.
So you
Okay.
want to, instead of saying what you think, which you're right, that
Which is a judgment. Yeah.
the absence of saying that at other times is makes it clear to him that you are like approving of him more when he's nice to his brother. But
Yeah.
if you
Yeah.
just want to highlight the fact that he was nice to his brother, just say like, "Oh my gosh, your brother's so happy when you play with him," or whatever.
Oh, that's good. And also, I find it like more like coaching him on social skills, right? Because that's my big concern too. When he's mean to others and he's being rejected by peers or stuff like that, I'm like, oh my gosh, well, the meaner you are to others and the more intolerant of others you are, the less they'll want to be with you. But I don't want to,
Mm-hmm.
pile on. So I
Mm-hmm.
like that. I like that a
Mm-hmm.
lot. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
thank you.
I
Hmm.
think a lot of your work, Stephanie, is just going to be keeping yourself from getting carried away by the fear of the future.
Yeah,
And the fear,
definitely.
like definitely, like we talked about that a lot last time, but just like really giving yourself so much compassion about, everything that you've done in the past, about how hard things are for you now with this intense kid. And then
Hmm.
also really wrapping yourself up in what would I do if I weren't afraid in this moment? Like
Yeah.
he pushes someone out of the way to get to the breakfast table. Oh my goodness, you're so hungry. Like,
Hmm.
come here, buddy. Let's get you some breakfast. You know,
Yeah.
and if you
Well,
felt like you need to say something, you could be like, next time when you're coming to the table, just watch out with your body, watch out for your body when you're coming by other people or something like that.
yeah. I guess it's really the intent. Like when there's an intent of like, I have to go in front, because it's not like if it was just by accident, kind of like impulse control, I'm in a rush, I would like be like able to dismiss it easily. But if it's like feel like body check, the
Well, but
toddler.
that still is impulse control. His need to
Yeah,
be
you're right.
first is overwhelming his knowledge of not, his knowledge that you shouldn't push people out of the way.
You're right. Thank you. Thank you. It's very helpful.
That is still impulse control. Because sometimes, haven't you ever felt like, oh, I want to be first in this line, but as an adult, it's rude to push people out of the way to get there. So that's your
Mhm.
control. Even though you
Or
really
like,
want to be first to get the ice cream, you're not going to push everyone
yeah,
out of the way to get it.
yeah, or like he's like the baby's on me or something, and Thomas wants to touch Felix, and Felix pushes him away, like I want to be with mom, but Thomas will take that personally and be really upset with his brother, and he'll push his brother really hard. Like, how do you feel when I push you? And like, she's my mom too, and like I realize it comes from a place of like, like contradictory feelings, but it's hard to see him like be rough. But you're right, it's still all impulse control. Thank you for
And
helping me.
also remember, I can't remember if we talked about this last time, but remember, even though he's 9 and his brother's 1, he sees them as equals,
Yes. Okay.
right? So
Yeah.
it's not like, oh, I'm being like cruel to babies. It's just
Mm-hmm.
like, this is my brother who's my competition for the scarce resource of my mother.
Yeah. Okay. No, we hadn't talked about that last time. It's interesting. And I guess the same would apply
That's
to the
in the
dog too, huh?
siblings. Yes, dog too. That's in the siblings module of the course. So you might
Okay.
not have gotten there yet. I don't think
No.
we've gotten there yet. Yeah.
Okay.
So,
Awesome.
but
Thank
yeah,
you.
siblings, no matter what the age difference is, see themselves as equals.
Okay. It's very good. Thanks.
Hmm.
Interesting.
And for us, there's a
I'm
huge
wondering, like,
difference between 9
you know,
and 1.
yes, for sure. And like you're saying, like I have a lot of work to do on like my fears and all of that. But also the fact that he's older and like, we're getting close to like puberty and things like that. I think I'm overwhelmed by like time. Like it feels like I have to make it all better as
Yeah.
soon as
Okay.
possible.
So
Right?
so
Is there
that's
like a
certainly
mantra I could have
Well,
for
I'll tell
that?
you the mantra I use when I'm feeling stressed about time. And I think stressed about time is stressed about time, whether it's your kids or your work or whatever. My mantra is there's enough time for everything. There's enough time for everything. And there really is. And the more you feel anxious about time, the harder it's going to be for you to make the changes that you're trying to make.
Yes. All right.
Even if you were 16, you could still be making these changes that you want to make.
It's
And,
never too late.
it's never too late.
Okay. All right, thanks.
All right.
So yeah, so
So
that's
thank you for the update, and we will see you in office hours.
all right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode. I hope you found this conversation insightful and exactly what you needed in this moment. Be sure to subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast platform and leave us a rating and review on Apple Podcasts. Remember that I'm rooting for you. I see you out there showing up for your kids and doing the best you can. Sending hugs over the airwaves today. Hang in there. You've got this.